The Alpha King married her without love. Then he read the letter she never meant him to see a true story. People talk about arranged marriages like they belong to a different time, like they ended somewhere between the invention of the internet and the first time a woman got a passport in her own name, like they are a relic now, something kept behind glass for people to look at from a comfortable distance. Nadia has a marriage certificate in a gold frame on her parents' wall that would like to politely correct this impression. The certificate is laminated. Her mother chose the frame because gold means this is real, this is permanent, this is not something we are shy about. The frame hangs between a framed photograph from Mecca and a calendar nobody has updated since a year the whole family has agreed not to discuss. Nadia looks at the certificate every time she visits home. She is never quite sure what she is supposed to feel when she looks at it. Pride, possibly. Mostly she feels that it is very laminated. She was 23 when she got married. This detail matters because 23 felt, from inside it, like a perfectly reasonable age to make an enormous and irreversible decision. She had her degree. She had plans, loosely held but real. She was not a child. She told herself she was a sensible person making a practical choice in a situation that rewarded sensible practical choices. That is also, precisely, the kind of language a 23-year-old uses when she is frightened and has decided that frightened is not a useful state to be in, and so has put it somewhere and brought out sensible instead. His name was Rayan. She knew his name before she knew anything else about him, which is how these introductions work. The name arrives first, wrapped in context, delivered by a mother with a specific tone of voice, the tone that means, "This is worth your attention." His family was known in the community in the way old buildings are known, not because of anything dramatic they did, but because they had been there long enough that their absence would be noticed. His father had built a real estate business from a single rented office in the early 90s. That had required a specific kind of courage at a specific time. Now the business was proper. Staff, reputation, the kind of solidity that does not need to advertise itself. Rayan had taken over 2 years ago. He was 28. He was, everyone said, serious. Everyone said this approvingly. The first meeting was at her parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. Her mother had made the good biscuits. The house smelled of cardamom and careful preparation. Nadia sat in her chair and looked at him. He wore a white kurta and shoes that were so clean she briefly, absurdly, wondered if he had bought them that morning. He shook her father's hand with exactly the right amount of firmness. He greeted her mother with exactly the right amount of deference. He sat down and looked at Nadia for 3 seconds. Directly, not uncomfortable, not evasive. "Assalamu alaikum," he said. "Wa alaikum assalam," she said back. Then came the tea and the biscuits and the formal questions, the ones that are not really about the answers but about whether the person answering them seems like someone who belongs in a room like this. Rayan answered everything in full, correct sentences. He was polite without being eager. He was confident without being self-important. He said nothing wrong. He also said nothing that surprised her. Every answer was the one you would give if you had thought carefully about the question and settled on the best version of your position. She found herself wondering what he would say if someone asked him something he hadn't prepared. She put this thought away. There were 2 more meetings. The third was without the families, just the 2 of them, which was progress, which was both families saying, "We trust this." In that meeting he asked about her degree. She told him, literature. She loved it in the way you love something impractical that requires defending to people who want to know what you'll do with it. She was thinking about editing, or maybe publishing, still working it out. He said, "What would help you decide?" She had not expected that question. It was real, the kind that assumed she was in the middle of an actual process of figuring something out, not just waiting to land at the obvious place. She looked at him and thought, "Oh, there you are." She kept that question, put it somewhere. She called Zara that night. "What's he like?" Zara said. "He asked a real question," Nadia said, out of a full conversation. "One real question." "Yes." "Nadia, I know," she said. "I know." But she said yes. A not no in the mathematics of this situation was effectively a yes, and she had kept the question, what would help you decide, and thought it was a door, and decided to find out. They married in August, 400 people, 3 outfit changes, food that everyone still talks about. Nadia wore red and gold and smiled through 12 hours, with the discipline of a woman who has decided composure is required, and who is, above all, capable of composure. In every photograph she looks radiant. In the photograph she looks at most, the one where they are standing together, they are both looking at the camera. She has thought about that photograph many times since. She thinks it was accurate. The house was his. Not in a proprietary way. He never said so, never behaved as though she was a guest, but in the way that places belong to the people who have lived in them longest, who have left the most evidence of themselves in the rooms. The house already had a personality when she arrived. She was the new thing. The house was not. It was a good house. Good light, good proportions, the kind of spaces that feel calm rather than crowded. The furniture was chosen by someone who understood interior design and had no particular interest in warmth. Everything was in the right place. Nothing was unnecessary. It was the house equivalent of Rayon's answers at the first meeting. Correct, considered, nothing wrong with any of it. She unpacked over the first week. She found homes for her things, books on the shelves, kitchen equipment alongside his, clothes into the half wardrobe he had left cleared. She put her plants on the balcony because it got the best morning light, and because the balcony, she sensed, was unclaimed. Nobody had done anything with it. It was a space with potential. Tomatoes first. They were reliable, forgiving, the kind of thing that rewarded attention predictably. Then mint and coriander because she used them constantly, and it seemed absurd to keep buying them from a shop. Then, after a week that had been harder than expected for reasons she was not fully examining, she bought the rosebush. The woman at the plant shop had tried to redirect her. "You'll want a garden for that, really." "I have a balcony," Nadia said. The woman made the face of someone who has learned when a customer has decided. "Big pot," she said. "Special feed." "And even then." "I'll take it," Nadia said. Her mother said the same thing. "A rose in a pot won't last." "We'll see," Nadia said. She knew, at some level she wasn't inspecting too closely, why she had bought it. She wanted something of hers to persist in this space, something that would grow or fail based on her attention, evidence of her presence in a house that did not yet know her. She bought the feed and the soil, and she tended it, and she did not think too hard about what it meant. Rayon did not ask about the plants. He walked past the balcony every morning. The path from the bedroom to the kitchen took him directly past the glass doors, and he kept walking. She was often visible when he passed. He said good morning. He continued. The tomatoes grew and the herbs spread, and the rosebush settled in with stubborn determination, and none of it seemed to register. She noticed. She also noticed he was not unkind. This is important because it matters for the truth of the story. He was never cold in the way people mean when they say a husband was cold to his wife, the dismissal, the belittling, the small, precise cruelties. He was not that. He was the other kind, the kind that is harder to name, harder to describe to people who want a clean villain, the kind who is simply absent in presence, who occupies a room and is also somewhere 4 steps ahead, running the next situation so that the version you get at home is the well-maintained remainder after the main self has given itself to the workday. He worked long hours and he was good at it. She respected this genuinely. She also noticed, and tried not to turn into a grievance, that the business received the version of him that leaned in. At home, she received the polite, efficient, after-hours version. He asked how her day was. She told him. He listened, or approximated listening. They ate dinner. He worked or slept. They began again. She started eating breakfast at 6 in the morning. Not by decision exactly. It accumulated. She was early the first time because she couldn't sleep, the second time because she had things to think through, and by the third it was just her hour. 6 o'clock. Quiet. Hers. Without the question of whether he wanted company or would find company an imposition. She had never asked that question out loud. She had answered it by quietly rearranging herself around the not knowing, moving to a time when the question wouldn't arise. She did not notice herself doing this until much later, looking back. You only notice a habit once it has become architecture. There is a particular skill that Nadia had developed over years, of being the quiet one, the sensible one, the daughter who did not cause problems, the skill of waiting without looking like she was waiting. She used it throughout the first year. She used it when he came home late, and she had already eaten, and she did not remark on the lateness. She used it when his mother called and asked leading questions about grandchildren, and she answered carefully and without hostility. She used it at family dinners when people directed questions about her through him, as though she were a country he had visited and could report on, and she smiled and let him report and did not make anything of it. She used it at home, in the evenings, when she could hear him in his study on work calls that ran long, and she would be on the balcony tending the rosebush in the last light and thinking about nothing in particular, which was also a skill she had developed. She had her routines, the garden, the freelance editing work she had gradually taken on, the long Tuesday calls with Zara, her notebooks, the 6 o'clock mornings. She had, in the space created by his inattention, built a complete and private internal life. She understood this only later, that you can be lonely and not know it, because you are also very busy. That loneliness, when it arrives in the form of a polite and well-managed marriage, does not announce itself, it just accumulates. The accumulation was in the notebook. The letter was written on a Thursday night in January, 14 months after the wedding. She had not planned it. She was sitting at the desk in the corner of the bedroom that she had quietly claimed as hers. Small lamp, notebooks, the photograph of her and Zara at the sea. She had been intending to think through a question from the editing work. Instead, she wrote a date at the top of the page, and then I don't know how to explain this to myself. The door was open. She kept going. She wrote about the tomatoes, how she had grown them and harvested them and made a sauce in August that she still thought about, rich and slightly sweet from the balcony heat, the best thing she'd cooked in months. How she had eaten it at 6 in the morning from the spoon and thought he would like this, and how she had not told him, had kept it entirely to herself, not secretively but privately, the way she kept many things, because she had decided without announcing the decision that certain things were hers alone. I didn't tell you about them. I'm not entirely sure why. She wrote about the morning schedule, about how she had learned his routine with the precision of someone studying for an exam they had not signed up for. Alarm, shower, coffee, departure. How it was now inside her like a second clock, and how, at some point, her whole morning had reorganized itself around this timetable without her consciously choosing to. I think this is what we learn to do, she wrote. Women in this situation, we cartograph ourselves around the people we are living with until we have forgotten what our own map looked like. I have been doing this for 14 months, and I only noticed it last Tuesday. She wrote about the wedding photograph, about the two of them both looking at the camera, about the accuracy of it. She wrote about his question from the third meeting, the real one, how she had kept it, how she had been waiting for another. I have been waiting for you to ask me something real, she wrote. Not logistics, not dinner, something that required my actual self to answer. I think I have been waiting since the third meeting, and I have been careful not to let the waiting become a wound. She paused. The city was quiet outside. Rayon was asleep in that uncomplicated, slightly enviable way of his. She wrote the last lines. I think I would have loved you if you had ever made room for it, but you never did, and I learned to work around the space you occupied instead. That is not the same thing. I am not sure it is your fault. I am not sure it is mine. I think perhaps it is just what happened. She stopped. She read it back. She closed the notebook carefully, the way you close something you are not finished with, but are not ready to keep open. She got into bed next to her husband and lay in the dark and did not think about what she had written. This was a specific skill, having put something somewhere and being able to leave it there for the time being. The notebook went into the desk drawer in the morning, dictionary on top, graduation photograph on top of that. She did not burn it. She told herself this was because she hadn't thought to. She was probably lying to herself. But it was a lie that held, and she was practiced. To understand Rayon properly, you need to understand something about the men in his family, which is that they have been, for at least 3 generations, excellent at running things and quite bad at being inside them. His grandfather had the difficult year, business trouble, a sick parent, a situation the family refers to only obliquely, and had managed all of it without losing his composure for a single day. The family told this story approvingly. The lesson embedded was, see how he carried it all. See how capable. See how a man of this family does not let one thing become everything. Rayon had grown up inside this story, and others like it. He had absorbed them the way children absorb the atmosphere of their families, not as explicit lessons, but as the definition of what a man of his people was. A man of this family managed situations. He was capable. He did not let things overwhelm him. He had not chosen Nadia carelessly. He needs to say this, at least to himself. He had paid attention during the meetings. He had seen her steadiness, the way she did not perform herself. He had seen the intelligence in how she talked about her degree, not apologetically, just, here is what I loved, take it or leave it. He had asked his question because he genuinely wanted to know the answer. He had thought, this is someone worth building something with. He had not asked himself whether he was in love with her. Love, in his frame of reference, was not a precondition. It was something that might develop, or might not, and both outcomes were acceptable. What a marriage required was respect and compatibility and a shared sense of the project. He believed they had these. He believed the first year was going well. He had not noticed the breakfast schedule, had not noticed the tomatoes, had not noticed the quality of the silences, which he had taken for comfortable quiet rather than what they actually were. A woman who had decided not to ask for things. He found the notebook on a Wednesday evening in the 2nd February. He had made tea and was looking for the laptop charger. He went to the desk. The notebook was open on it, not left out on purpose, just open as in mid-session, the ribbon bookmark trailing. He saw the word you in the first line. He stopped. He knew it was her private notebook. He also knew he had already read a sentence. He pulled out the chair and sat down. Nuh. He read slowly. Not scanning for information. Slowly, carefully, the pace of someone walking into something heavy. The handwriting was not her public handwriting. He had seen her write shopping lists and brief notes. That handwriting was neat and deliberate. This was smaller, faster, tilted forward with urgency. Words crossed out and replaced. Others underlined twice or, in one case, so hard the pen had gone through the page. This was the handwriting of someone writing for no audience but themselves. He had never seen her without an audience before. He read about the tomatoes. He sat with this. She had made something, thought he would like it, eaten it alone at 6 in the morning, and said nothing. He tried to locate the distance between thinking he would like it and not telling him. In his world, these 2 points were separated by a very short action, you just said so. But reading the notebook, he was beginning to understand that the world she had been living in for 14 months was not his world. Same house, not the same world. He read about the cartography. He read that line 3 times. We cartograph ourselves around other people until we've forgotten what our own map looked like. He was a man who dealt in physical space, in property, in the geometry of buildings. This word reached him through that understanding. He could see it. A person redrawing her own territory over and over to accommodate a fixed object. The object not aware it was being navigated around, just sitting there, occupying space. The fixed object was him. He read about breakfast at 6. He had not known she ate at 6, had not known she had moved herself to 6. He thought about all the mornings he had come into the kitchen at 7, 7:15, and found it already clean and quiet, and had never thought to ask why. It had not registered as a thing with an explanation. He read about the question, the one real question, from the 3rd meeting, that she had kept it, that she had been waiting for another. He tried to count the real questions he had asked her in 14 months. the kind that required her actual self to answer. He stopped counting because the counting was taking him somewhere he did not want to be. He read the last lines. "I think I would have loved you if you had ever made room for it, but you never did, and I learned to work around the space you occupied instead. That is not the same thing. I am not sure it is your fault. I am not sure it is mine. I think perhaps it is just what happened." He read it twice, then a third time. He put the notebook down with both hands, carefully, the way you put down something heavier than it looks. He was still holding the tea. He looked at it. It was just a cup. He looked at it anyway, because it was the nearest available thing that did not require him to think about himself. In the next room, Nadia heard the notebook land on the desk. She knew that desk. She knew all its sounds. She knew what she had just heard. She went very still. She was in the living room with a book she had stopped reading 3 pages ago. She held it open in her lap and listened. Silence from the bedroom. Then the chair scraping back. Then footsteps. Then the specific quality of stillness that comes from someone standing very still in a doorway. She did not look up. She looked up eventually. She was going to have to. He was in the doorway with the cup of tea still in both hands. He had carried it the whole way from the desk without setting it down, like he had forgotten it was there, like something more important had happened and the tea had simply come along. He looked at her. She had been looked at by him hundreds of times in 14 months. But this was different, and she knew it without needing to name the difference. The way you know when weather is about to change, before you can say exactly which clouds mean what. He was seeing her, not the composed version, the version in the notebook. Being seen after a long time of careful invisibility felt, she would think later, disorienting, not bad exactly, not good exactly, like stepping from a dim room into one with a different quality of light and needing a moment for your eyes to adjust. She kept her face where she had trained it. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said. Not a question, too flat for a question, the sound of something that had been said 100 times inside a person's head and was now being said out loud because there was nowhere else to put it. She could have been generous. She is generous by nature. It is her deepest reflex, the habit of being the daughter who made things easier for everyone. She could have softened this, could have given him a landing place. She had plenty of gentleness available. She chose not to use it. "You weren't listening," she said. 3 words. Quiet. Not angry. Anger was too simple for what this was. Just true. And flat. And said in the same composed tone she used for everything, which somehow landed heavier than volume would have. Then she stood. She walked to the desk, she picked up the notebook with one hand, and she walked out. She closed the door quietly. She always closed doors quietly. This time was the same as every other time. It was also not the same at all. He stood in the doorway for a long time after. The tea went cold. They slept in the same bed that night. This was not new. But the silence that night was different from every previous silence. Not the comfortable gray quiet of 2 people in parallel lives, but something full. Something weighted with everything in the notebook, and everything said in 3 words, and the closed door, and the cold tea. Nadia lay on her side facing the wall. Not crying, not calm either. Somewhere in between, at the frequency that does not have a clean name, but that most women in her position would recognize without needing it named. The frequency of having been found, of having left something out, whether by accident or intention, is a question she was not fully answering, and having it found, and standing now on the uncertain ground of what comes after. She thought about the notebook, about the fact that she had not burned it. She had had a lighter in the desk drawer since the first week in the house. The notebook had been in the drawer below it for 14 months. She had opened that drawer many times and seen both things and had never used one on the other. She had kept the letter. She was honest enough with herself, lying in the dark, to understand what this meant. Not that she had wanted him to find it, but that she had not wanted it to not exist. There is a difference. On his side of the bed, Rayanne was not sleeping. She could tell from his stillness. Not the loose, gone stillness of real sleep, but the rigid stillness of a man keeping himself very still on purpose. He was on his back, which he never was. He was staring at the ceiling. He was thinking about the cartography line. He could not stop. He was good at assessing spaces, buildings, layouts, what a room could hold and how people moved through it. And he had missed this, had looked at the space of his own marriage every day for 14 months and not seen that someone had been reorganizing herself to fit around him, had seen only that everything was in order. He lay in the dark and took inventory, methodically, without sentiment. The list of what was not there was longer than he had expected. No. He came to breakfast at 6 the next morning. She was in the kitchen. This was her hour. She had made it hers over 14 months, quietly, without telling anyone it had been claimed. She heard his alarm and then immediately his footsteps and thought, he is going somewhere, will pass through, this is not significant. She was already moving her tea toward the other room. He came into the kitchen and sat down. She stood at the counter with her tea. He poured himself some from the pot she had made. He looked at the table, then he looked at her. "What are you growing on the balcony?" he said. 4 words plus a preposition. The smallest possible question about the thing she had been tending and talking to quietly for 14 months while he walked past it every morning without stopping. Something moved in her chest, small, real, the particular movement of something held with great care for a very long time beginning, cautiously, to relax. She told him, tomatoes, finished now with the season, mint and coriander, the basil she was losing. The rose bush, he said, as though locating it. My mother said it wouldn't survive in a pot. Has it? So far. He nodded. He drank his tea. She set plates on the table and sat across from him. He asked about the herbs, whether she used them in the cooking. She told him yes, constantly. He said it explained something he had noticed about the food lately, that it had been tasting different. She had not known he'd noticed. They ate. It was not a dramatic breakfast. Nothing was declared or resolved. It was tea and food, and a handful of real sentences exchanged across a table that had mostly known parallel silence for over a year. But she noticed. He noticed that she noticed. That was enough, not to fix anything, but to establish that a beginning was at least possible. Things did not transform overnight. Nadia is careful about this because the story, told carelessly, can sound like it ends in a clean arc. Letter, confrontation, change, done. It did not. Real things do not work that way. What changed was smaller and more durable. He started standing on the balcony sometimes in the evenings, not often, but there were nights when she would see him through the glass, just standing there, looking at the city or the plants or whatever the evening was doing. She did not join him unless she was already going out. She let him have the standing there on his own terms. He started asking questions, real ones, occasionally, not constantly, not with the frequency of someone performing attentiveness, but the way someone mentions a thought that occurred to them, what she was reading, whether she liked it, what she was thinking about. He started following up, not just accepting the first answer, but asking about the second thing, the thing behind the first thing. Once, quite late, he sat down across from her at the kitchen table while she was writing. She had started writing of her own, not just the notebooks, something that might eventually be a real piece of writing. He came in for water and looked at her and sat down. He did not read over her shoulder. He did not ask. He just sat there with his water while she worked, a quiet presence in the room that did not require anything. She had assumed she needed solitude for the writing. She found instead that his being there, without requiring anything, was just company. She wrote for another hour. When she looked up, he had fallen asleep in the chair with his head dropped to one side, which was not dignified and which she found unexpectedly endearing. She saved her work. She turned the kitchen light down. She let him sleep for a while before she woke him gently and sent him to bed. She did not write about this in the notebook. She did not need to. She knew she would remember it. He found the gardening gloves. She had been scratched twice tending the rose bush. He had seen, both times, without saying anything, just looking at her hands with an expression she had not known what to do with. One morning she came out to water and found the gloves on the ledge beside the pot. Her gloves, missing since the first month, located and placed without announcement. She stood there holding them for a while. She said nothing about it that evening. He said nothing about it. It just existed between them, a small proof that he had started to look. There was a family dinner at the end of October, at his parents' house, which his mother had been coordinating since August. This was not unusual. His mother coordinated things with the thoroughness of someone who has decided that if she does not coordinate them, they will simply not happen, and she is probably right. The dinner was at the house Rayanne had grown up in, larger than theirs, full of the particular weight of a house that has been lived in by the same family for a long time. Nadia had learned this house over the past year. She had learned its codes, what to bring, when to arrive, who to greet first, which conversations to stay in, and which to gracefully pass along. She had learned his mother well enough to understand that love in this family was expressed through practical competence. His mother showed love by ensuring everyone had eaten, by remembering details from previous conversations and following up on them, by making certain that everything was correct. She was not a warm woman in the performing warmth sense. She was a precise and present woman. This was its own kind of care. At this dinner, his mother asked Nadia about the editing work, not the polite version of the question. The last time they had spoken, Nadia had apparently said enough about a specific memoir she was working on for his mother to remember it. She asked about that. Nadia told her. His mother asked a follow-up. They had a conversation, a real one, specific and extended, about the work of being inside someone else's writing, what you were trying to preserve versus what you were trying to clarify. His mother had opinions about this. They were not always Nadia's opinions. They disagreed twice. His mother expressed the disagreement directly and without offense. Nadia found herself surprised by how much she enjoyed this. She looked across the table at Rayanne at some point during the exchange. He was watching the two of them talk with an expression she had not seen before, something that might, on a less measured face, have looked like relief. On the drive home, he said, "My mother likes you. She has opinions about editing," Nadia said. "She has opinions about everything," he said. "She reserves actual disagreement for people she respects." Nadia thought about this. "She asked about the manuscript last month too," he said. "She asked me. I didn't know the answer." Nadia looked at him. "You could have asked me." "I know," he said. "I'm telling you now." It was not quite an apology. It was something else. An acknowledgement, a flagging of a pattern, delivered in the particular style of a man who is not comfortable with large declarations, but has understood that small ones can carry weight. "The basil," he said, after a pause. "What?" "You said you were losing the battle with it. What does it need?" She blinked. "More sun than the balcony gets." He nodded. He drove. She looked out the window at the city and thought, this is what it looks like. Not grand, not once. Over and over, in the small questions, building something out of the cumulative asking. She thought about the letter, about the line, "I would have loved you if you had ever made room for it." He was making room, not perfectly, not quickly, making room. She did not say this out loud. It was too new to say out loud. Some things need to be carried quietly for a while before they can be put into words, and she was the kind of person who understood this about herself. She looked out the window. The city was lit and moving. She felt, for the first time in a long time, like a person going home. 6 months after the letter, on the balcony in April, late, the city quiet below them, he said, "Can I ask you something about the letter?" He had not mentioned it directly since that night. Neither had she. The letter had existed between them like something both were navigating carefully, giving it space. "Yes," she said. "The cartography part," he said. "I want to understand it practically, what it actually looked like day to day." Such a Rayanne question. The request for practical coordinates of something emotional. 6 months ago she might have found this insufficient. Now she found it almost touching, that he was trying to locate the thing in the only world he fully knew. She thought about it honestly. "Breakfast at 6, she said. "That's the clearest one. I didn't know if you wanted to eat together." Instead of asking, which felt like imposing, I moved myself to a time when the question wouldn't come up. I rearranged my morning around a possibility without knowing if it was even real. He was quiet. "The tomatoes," she continued, "I thought you'd like the sauce." I said nothing, not to hide it, because somewhere I had decided that the things that were mine alone, and I hadn't realized I'd made that decision until I wrote it down. "Why didn't you just ask?" he said. Genuinely asking. "Why didn't you?" she said. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the city. She watched him do the thing she had been watching him do more of in recent months. Sit with discomfort rather than immediately converting it into a managed position. He was learning to sit with things. He had a long way to go. He was learning. "I thought," he said slowly, "that if you needed something you would tell me. And I thought if you wanted something you would ask," she said. And we were both waiting for the other to go first. So neither of us did, for 14 months. He made a sound, not quite a laugh, something rueful, the sound of someone acknowledging an absurdity that is also a little painful. "We were idiots," he said. Something was different in his face, looser, less managed. For a moment he was not running on prepared answers. He was just here, on the balcony in the April night, having said something true about himself, and left it unsoftened. "A little bit," she agreed. The city made its sounds. They drank their tea. Nothing was resolved. But something that had been at a careful distance was less far away. Zara came to visit in the spring and filled the house with her particular weather system, louder than necessary, funnier than required, taking up exactly as much space as she had always taken up, which was all of it, without apology or awareness. Nadia loved her for this. Zara watched Rayan over the weekend. She watched him the way she watched everyone Nadia was close to, openly, carefully, without pretending to be casual about it. On the second evening, Rayan made tea for everyone and asked Zara about a project she had mentioned at dinner the night before. She told him. He followed up. She gave a longer answer. He followed that up with something more specific, a question about a structural compromise she had been wrestling with, whether the community had been in the room for that discussion or whether it had been presented after the fact. Zara answered for 10 minutes. Nadia sat across from them and watched her husband listen, really listen, the kind you can see happening, where the information is going somewhere real and the questions that follow are built from what was actually said. Later, when Rayan had stepped away, Zara turned to Nadia. "He's different," she said. "From what?" "From before. From what you described." Nadia thought about how to answer honestly. "I think he's the same," she said. "I think he's just pointing it here now. The attention. It was always there. He just wasn't directing it at this part of his life." Zara was quiet for a moment, which for Zara meant something. "Are you happy?" she said. Nadia thought about the gloves on the ledge, the rosebush question, the April balcony, the kitchen table writing, and the fallen asleep chair. The drive home from his parents' house, and the question about the basil. "I think I'm getting there," she said. "That's better than fine," Zara said. "Fine is what you said before." "Yes," Nadia said, "it is." The rose bush bloomed in October. 8 flowers. Deeply red, slightly chaotic, not arranged with any consideration for what looked correct. They opened all at once, broad and full, pointing in different directions with the complete indifference of something that has decided to be alive and is not interested in being neat about it. Nadia found them in the early morning when she went out to water. She had not been expecting it. The bush had been stubbornly green and bare for so long she had quietly started to wonder if her mother had been right after all. Then she came out that morning, and there they were. 8 of them, red as a decision. She stood there for a while, just being in the fact of them. She thought about the plant shop woman's face, her mother's certainty, the 2 earlier cuttings that had not made it through their first summer. The months of green possibility without any sign that anything was coming. All the tending she had done in the months when there was no visible proof it was working. She heard the door behind her. Rayon came out with his coffee, still early morning light, and he looked at her face first. Then he followed her gaze to the flowers. He stood beside her. He looked at them. Not a glance, the full, unhurried attention he had been learning to give to the things in this life that were hers. "Your mother was wrong," he said. "She was," Nadia said. Something soft in his face, not performed softness. The kind that happens when a person is somewhere they did not plan to be and is not managing it. Just here, in the October morning, next to his wife, looking at something she had grown. She thought about the letter, still in the notebook. She had stopped putting things on top of it. She had not read it again yet. She thought she might, soon. The way you read something from a different chapter of yourself, with the curious and forgiving distance of time. She was not quite ready. She was closer to ready than she had ever been. She thought about a question he had asked 3 weeks ago, at dinner. What do you actually want? The next few years. Not the sensible answer. The real one. She had told him. The real one. The editing she was building toward and the specific kind she wanted to do. The writing she wanted to eventually be on the other side of, making rather than tending. A place she had always wanted to go, somewhere completely different, somewhere she had never been, before the year was out. He had listened all the way through. Then, tell me more about the somewhere different. She had. They stood on the balcony until the coffee went cold, and the city below them started its morning noise. Neither of them moved first. They stood beside the rose bush and the 8 red flowers and the city getting on with itself. 2 people who had spent almost 2 years learning how to be in the same place at the same time, who were not finished learning but were, undeniably and finally, trying. They went inside eventually. She made breakfast and he helped without being asked, and they ate together at 6 in the morning, which had been her hour, and was now also his, and had become theirs the way these things become shared, slowly, without announcement, one ordinary morning at a time. The story is not in the letter. It is not in the confrontation. It is not even in the flowers. It is here, in this kitchen, in this morning, in these 2 people who are finally both looking at each other instead of at the camera. It took longer than it should have. It got there anyway. End.